Good morning. Wow. I think I'm going to have to explain myself. I got a lot of interesting feedback yesterday when I posted the thumbnail for today's show on Blue Sky. So let me begin by saying, and just putting it out there, ooh, I don't want this. Nobody wants this cringy, yucking it up with Ted Cruz. And no, Senator Amy Klobuchar did not need to do this on camera with Ted Cruz for the purpose of passing legislation. So for those who think that's what's going on here, hold on. Let me explain things for you. Okay. Let me show you the full yucking it up video and this so-called pick me girl attitude. Okay. Let me play this for you and then we can discuss on the other side. Okay. Here we go, my friends.
Can I get you?
Oops, I am sorry. That is not it. Here we go. This is a homegrown, home cooked show, right? You're not going to a restaurant. This is not either, Panera or Chez Panisse. I've never been to that, but I've always wanted to go to that restaurant. This is not a restaurant. We serve up everything right here from scratch. Let's try that again.
But we do have to put some rules in the place, or I'm afraid, as
this
David
common
Brooks once
ground
wrote,
stuff.
is this going to take us to heaven or hell? It has to take us to heaven. Okay, Joe.
What about Tulsi Gabbard? I'm going to get this going. That was Andrew all along, Senator Cruz, with those really good those really good questions. If I'm going to get in, I'm talking about Hegseth or something to get you guys going. Okay. I've had enough of it.
Amy told me she's voting for all of Trump's nominees.
The last time I voted for half his nominees on the cabinet because I carefully reviewed each one and made decisions. And I just don't think you should give a president a blank slate power when in fact we are supposed to have advise and consent and have an oath that we take ourselves to protect the Constitution.
I thought I should get on camera just for a second. It's the holidays. Everything was going.
I'm sorry. I do want to get that. I took that off stage, and I want to add the rest of it.
Decided to join the party.
I did that in jest. It wasn't a. That
We were
wasn't a
saying
serious.
Merry Christmas, and you jumped in and said "Bah humbug."
There you go. Happy holidays, guys.
Okay, fuck all the way off, Amy. I'm sorry. I stood by Amy Klobuchar when her staff apparently leaked to the press that she got angry if she was hungry. And they gave her a salad and she's on a plane and there was no utensil and she had to pull out. They couldn't figure out how to get her utensil. And so she took out her hair comb to eat her salad. You know what? I was fine with that. I understand. Maybe she apologized after. It's okay to have high demands. And who knows? But this is inexcusable. And let me explain why. Why were they even together? Well, in early December, a bill passed the Senate called the Take It Down Act. And the Take It Down Act has a very, very long acronym. But basically, it is a federal criminal law replicating what about a dozen of states have done. And this law is designed to create a crime of up to 2 years imprisonment for anyone who spreads what's called revenge porn, including revenge porn created by artificial intelligence. This is a very serious thing, and I'm trying to tell you about it because I care about it. And yet at the same time, I need to tell you what Amy Klobuchar did here is not essential to that legislation and disgusting. Okay, so let me just say, what this legislation is designed to do, it's designed to do two things: create a crime for spreading revenge porn, and the take it down part of it is a requirement on social media platforms that if they become aware by a victim that someone is spreading revenge porn, that they take it down off their platform and even take it out of private messaging groups. Okay, so this begs the question of, it's not begs the question, invites the question of what is meant by revenge porn and what is revenge porn using artificial intelligence. And revenge porn is essentially when someone uses images of someone and without their consent, either the images were recorded of this person or they're spread without this person's consent. Like this isn't someone who is actually selling their own images as part of the porn industry, but this is images of you or someone else that are considered, I suppose, pornographic or exposing your body in nature and that you did not agree to it, right? That's what revenge porn is. Okay. And then it's being spread. What is it using AI? Well, these deep fakes, I'm sure you've seen deep fakes where people make it look like they superimpose with very highly sophisticated digital tools that are available to all your face or someone else's face on someone engaged in a sexual act or in some sort of pornographic video or image. And this happened to people like AOC and other famous people, right? And it happens to, it's terrible. It happens to teenagers in high school. It's a form of bullying, right? It's awful. And so this legislation is designed to punish that and also stop it at the federal level. Now, on its merits, you could think of, if you wanted to, concerns about it. But at the end of the day, you hope that prosecutors will use it wisely and not, because I do have this concern, for example, not treat something as revenge porn. Like, I don't know, have you seen the many memes going around before of Donald Trump's face? It's not done well, but Donald Trump's face superimposed on a nude body performing what appears to be just vaguely soft porn with Vladimir Putin, things like that. Have you seen the giant sculpture of a naked Donald Trump? I do hope that legislation like this at the federal and state level isn't used to put people in prison for 2 years for those kinds of things. But okay, I'm assuming no. And the thing is, this legislation, which was introduced by Ted Cruz and Amy Klobuchar and a few other Democrats and a handful of Republicans sponsored this legislation. It passed in the Senate, my understanding was, on a voice vote, a unanimous consent. And how did that happen? Like, it wasn't actually like a regular roll call. And this is important. It happened because it was added into the omnibus spending bill, right? This is one of these pieces of must-pass legislation to fund the budget. Lots of pieces of things are put in here. Fine. Now this goes to the House. So that happened like December 3rd, right? We're talking, over 2 weeks ago. Why was just yesterday or the day before Amy Klobuchar with a festive attitude, smiling and yucking it up with Ted Cruz? Well, they're making the tours apparently of the news and maybe visiting the House, saying this is important legislation to pass. Now, there is no reason on this planet that she needs to be going shoulder to shoulder with Ted Cruz pushing this legislation. It sold itself in the Senate. There are others who can do it. She could be doing it on her own. She doesn't need to be in the House or even in front of a flipping camera yucking it up with him. And now let me tell you more about what you heard and saw in that video. They were talking about, oh, look, let's celebrate bipartisanship. There are things we can get done together. It's so important. And when the press, which makes sense, pushed them and said, okay, stop this. We want to talk about the hard questions like Trump's nominees. And Ted Cruz makes this joke, oh, Amy's going to support all of them. And then she tries to, instead of specifically saying, look, what she could have flippin' said is, look, I'm here with Ted because we support one piece of legislation. Now, I want you to set aside for a moment that she shouldn't have been there, right? We support the same piece of legislation. I want it to pass in the House, but I want to make absolutely clear that there are many nominees put forward by Donald Trump who are entirely unacceptable and dangerous to our democracy. She didn't say that. What did she do? She did the pick-me girl of like, hey, I'm not one of those people who will do a blanket rejection on all of the nominees, right? Oh, look, there was a whole bunch of Trump's nominees before that I voted for because I look at all the candidates and decide if they're worthy. Fuck off. That's your goddamn job to do. And right now, if we are to believe anything, which I do, the Democratic Party tells us about the dangers of Donald Trump's regime, why are you laughing and smiling and looking fawningly with your colleague, Ted Cruz? Now, others defended her, saying, look, you do what you need to do to get your legislation passed. Did I mention this was Ted's bill, not hers? Oh, did I also mention that there was a better bill put forward by other senators that was supported by AOC, who has been a victim of revenge porn? Never mind, right? She jumped onto the legislation that Ted Cruz put forward. Also, did I mention that this is not the time to normalize people like Ted Cruz and others who are kissing Donald Trump's ring and who are supporting deportation of 10 million people in America and want to take away the FDIC and Social Security? This is not what you should be doing, Senator Klobuchar, at all. And in fact, it is my view that the best thing that could happen in the next administration, the next Congress sworn in at the beginning of next month, in a couple of weeks, and after Donald Trump takes office, the best thing you could do is keep your head low, not be smiling with these people, and not help them do a goddamn thing at all. I don't care if you say, you know, I saw someone saying, don't you want her to serve her constituents? Okay, you know what? When Hitler was in power and someone was yucking it up with one of his, you know, lieutenants, and you say, well, she needs to do that to fund the little picnic they're going to have for the children of Munich. Fuck all the way off, people. I'm sorry. I am so enraged about this, but it is this kind of behavior that is the worst thing that we can do. Okay. And it's hard for me to criticize another woman because women get criticized, but I think it's important. She can take it. I can take criticism. We're not babies. We are adults. And all I'm doing, my friends, is going on this little sweet channel that we have here. We're building together with 8,000 people, right? She's in front of millions of people. She has real power, right? I'm not doing what Donald Trump does, which is sue people who say things I don't like, right? We need freedom of speech. When people say, what can we do? This is what we can do. If I were one of Amy Klobuchar's constituents, I would be writing her a letter saying, you know what? Minnesota should be, I don't even know if Minnesota has a revenge porn law, but I know Massachusetts does. I don't know if Michigan does. I can check. We should be passing legislation at the state level. And I'm not a states' rights person. I think federal legislation matters too. But we should be passing legislation at the state level, giving causes of action to people to sue for revenge porn. That's not what Amy's legislation did here, right? The good legislation that should have been supported, that Dick Durbin introduced, would let us sue people for putting this stuff up. That would help people, and they could sue across state lines as well. So okay, I think I'm done with my laying this out, but I think that smiling and saying, oh, we all often get along and I'm the rational person who's going to look at each candidate rationally is not helping things. I think I've made my point. Now, let me show you how it can be done. Who has set a good example? And someone pointed out to me, before I leave Klobuchar, that Amy Klobuchar was one of the first people to express her condolences to the family of Brian Thompson after he was killed by Luigi Mangione. Why jump out and show that? I think it's terrible that he was murdered. I also have not seen Amy Klobuchar mention and express her condolences to the children of the families, or even the children, migrant children who were murdered the same day in New York. I'm still waiting for Amy Klobuchar to express her condolences for the people who were murdered since that time. How about the kids murdered by another teenager at the high school the other day, young girl? How about the person who smashed their car into a building and then went in to shoot people? I have not heard her express her condolences. So I see what's going on here. That's all I'm going to say. And the Democratic Party needs to do better. Now, let me show you a good example. This is a good example here of a congressman, Robert Garcia, about how you can speak out and not try to kiss the ring in Congress. In this case, it's Congress, not the Senate. Let's hear him.
Today to call our colleagues in the Senate to reject Donald Trump's nomination of RFK Jr. as Secretary of Health and Human Services. Now, RFK has proven himself for decades to be a conspiracy theorist, and we cannot allow the critical work by the HHS and the doctors, the medical professionals there, to be undermined by someone with his record. Now, for those not familiar, RFK Jr. first has no scientific or medical credentials. Instead, he spent his career fueling anti-vaccine movements around the world, including one in Samoa that contributed to a measles outbreak that killed dozens of people and made almost 6,000 sick, most of them children and infants. Now, RFK Jr. has falsely claimed that vaccines cause autism and suggested that COVID health measures were worse than the Holocaust. He's also peddled in conspiracy theories that chemicals in water are making children transgender and gay. Now, this is someone who has threatened to gut the National Institutes of Health, the federal agency responsible for medical and public health research. Now, they, along with the rest of HHS, do vital, nonpartisan work that impacts every American in every community, from pandemic preparedness to cancer research to resources for mental health and substance abuse. There are real lives at stake. We just went through a pandemic that cost the lives of 1.3 million Americans, the single largest loss of life event in the modern era in our country and around the world. And we cannot allow at this moment to hand over the keys of public health to an extreme and unqualified and dangerous nominee.
Yeah, that could have been something Amy said. She could have said, all joking aside, we cannot hand the keys of public health over to a dangerous nominee who would cause the death of thousands of people, if not more. That would have been a nice thing. And you know what? You can say that with a smile on your face. See, I just did it, right? I'm a smiley gal from the Midwest, just like Amy. Oh, I forgot to tell you before we move on to our next topic, which is going to be the update on Luigi Mangione. What is the pick-me girl? I didn't even know this was a thing. And then I realized that a lot of my life, I had probably been behaving this way. The pick-me girl, I think, is like, it's like in the book, Gone Girl, not the movie. You know, the one who's supposed to be the cool girl, the one who's like, I'm not like the other ones. I'm not demanding. Pick me, you know. And I got to say, the label stings because I think I spent a lot of my life that way and not thinking about being in solidarity with others, right? We're stronger together, right? It's not about each of us and getting that pat on the head or that gold star or that good grade, right? And to be honest, I say that I acted like the pick-me girl, but really I was kind of an arrogant ass. I think I felt entitled. So I wasn't always pick-me. I was kind of like snarky my whole life, but with a little bit of a tinge, a sprinkle of pick-me. Let's talk about Luigi Mangione. We learned yesterday from Alvin Bragg that he has been officially charged in New York with 2 types of murder as well, involving treating this killing of Brian Thompson as an act of terrorism. Let's take a listen to Alvin Bragg right now in yesterday's press release.
It announced that Luigi Mangione, the defendant, is charged with 1 count of murder in the first degree and 2 counts of murder in the second degree, including 1 count of murder in the second degree as an act of terrorism for the brazen, targeted, and premeditated shooting of Brian Thompson, who, as you know, was the CEO of United Healthcare. We're here to announce that Luigi Mangione.
Sorry, I don't know what happened to this. Hold on.
And premeditated shooting of Brian Thompson, who, as you know, was the CEO of United Healthcare.
Yeah, I don't have the part about the terrorism in that video. So let me actually tell you the charge, just to be clear. Okay. He was indicted on first-degree murder, right, in the killing of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. And this is the first-degree murder charges in furtherance of terrorism. Now, I think that the reason why I think this is important is when I took the New York bar, I remember very clearly that New York, every state has different standards for what's considered first-degree murder. And in New York, I remember, and I don't know since I don't practice criminal law in New York, is that murder, here we go, murder in the first degree. Guys, I'm going to pull this up so you can see it. Before I pull it up, let me just say the deal is that in New York, here we go. And I'll blow this up in a second. In New York, and I'll throw the legislation, little law school lesson here in the chat. In New York, when I studied for the bar, it was tricky when you studied because first-degree murder in New York wasn't just premeditated killing, right? It also had to have like a higher other factor, like if it was a police officer or so on. So you might, someone might have the elements of deciding to, buy a gun and shoot someone and then they die. And that might not be considered in some states as first-degree murder. So this is why this terrorism charge might have been necessary so that they could politically say he was charged with first-degree murder, because if they said second-degree murder, the public might be outraged. Whether or not that first-degree murder charge stands, I think that was a publicity move, not a bad one, but let me just share this with you now. Okay, let me just blow this up a little bit for you so you can see it better. And then again, I threw it into the chat. So let me, I'm going to have to, yikes, I'm going to have to go into this here. Okay, so this is the statute in New York for murder in the first degree. That murder in the first degree, a person is guilty of murder in the first degree when, one, with intent to cause the death of another person, right? We need the intent element. He causes the death of such person or of a third person, and, right? And this is where we need this extra element. And the intended victim was a police officer, right? Or the intended victim was a peace officer, right? And then we go on firefighter, emergency medical, state of, Department of Corrections, and it goes, there's more on and on and on. And we get all these other, there might have been a burglary going on. There's all these, I'm scrolling down, there's all these, especially wanton and cruel manner. It goes more and more and more and further. And here we go. Boom. The victim was killed in furtherance of an act of terrorism as defined in some other statute. Or the defendant was, okay, so, and the defendant has to be more than 18 years old. Okay, so what is the point of that? The point of that is I actually learned something when I studied for the bar back too many decades ago to remember, and it has stuck in my brain. But also the point here is this. They needed to add something. Yes, Luigi was over 18. And yes, this appears to be, you can make the allegation credibly that he intended, right, to do this, right? Again, innocent until proven guilty, but it looks like he intended to cause this guy's death. It looked like he caused it, and he's over 18. That's not enough to get you to first-degree murder. You need some other element. And because Thompson was not a police officer, because this was not a particularly cruel method of killing and so on, they needed something. So they chose the terrorism charge. That is not ever going to stick. But again, this is why you come to this channel, to understand why that was done. I believe it was for publicity, so they could say first-degree murder, and they didn't have to. And it's smart. If they charged him with second-degree murder, you would have everyone saying, why is Alvin Bragg just charging with second degree? Because people don't know how the statute is built. You're very welcome. Now, here's something kind of upsetting related to Luigi. It turns out, you know, he's become a folk hero of the ilk of a Kyle Rittenhouse. I find this unsettling. And I am showing you what we are seeing now, which is the very new popular tattoo, not just of Luigi's mug, which I can understand for young people who think he is a thirst trap, which is already kind of disturbing in a lot of ways, but they actually have tattooed on people's arms the shooting scene. Here, I will show you this. I'm not including the volume because it's like, you know, it's kind of like heavy metal, etc. music, but you can take a look at this. It is kind of crazy. So this is a close-up. There it is, die, defend, depose on her arm. And then someone else on their leg has that. The backpack, the masked face, and Brian Thompson. Look, over and over again. There we go. Different images of Luigi Mangione. Yes, this is a moment in our history. And, you know, I'm observing this. It is self-expression. Again, I condemn Brian Thompson's murder. Why I'm showing this to you is to show you and emphasize that, oh, the Monopoly man. Okay, and there's the bullet casings, right, with the words defend, deny, depose. More than 40% people polled, apparently, and I don't know which poll it was. I'm reflecting to you what I read. Think this was justified. That's a huge problem. When we have vigilante justice, because people don't believe that those who, for example, are accused in his case of insider trading or the terrible gouging and denial, which I believe is fraudulent, of people who apply for insurance and so on, that goes unanswered, that people feel it is unjust. This is what happens. Okay. Now, let me say this one thing. I don't know if Michael's listening to me, but I can hear him. He is upstairs playing the show right now. And if he can hear me, he will turn down the volume or put his AirPods in, because I don't really want to hear myself echoing, honey. I love you very much. He may be on delay. And so it's probably going to be like 10 minutes from now that he actually turns down the volume, you guys. Okay. Speaking of CEOs and corporations getting away with things, I need to now turn to the money and crime section of the show. And that is involving the $650 million settlement that the Department of Justice entered into with McKinsey and Company, the consulting firm, giant consulting firm that, like other consulting firms, helps provide good advice to businesses in all aspects of, you know, anything from product marketing to restructurings and so on. And these firms, I don't know if McKinsey in particular, but other consulting firms also provide advice sometimes to government agencies. It is a good type of business to be in. And yet, when you have your clients as large corporations, and if those clients are engaged in criminal behavior, you're not supposed to be facilitating it. And that is what happened with McKinsey. So let me play you a clip about that settlement. And then, of course, you know what I'm going to say, which is, why the hell is no one going to jail? Number one. And number two, fuck you, Merrick Garland. Okay, here we go.
This morning, McKinsey and Company agreed to pay $650 million in a deferred prosecution agreement that will resolve a federal criminal probe into the company's consulting work advising Purdue Pharma on how to increase sales of its opioid painkiller OxyContin. A former top partner at McKinsey, Martin Elling, also agreed to plead guilty to obstruction of justice next month in the probe by the Department of Justice. The criminal charging document alleges the consulting giant, quote, knowingly and intentionally conspired with Purdue Pharma and others to aid and abet the misbranding of prescription drugs. The document also said McKinsey is accused through the acts of its then partner Elling of knowingly destroying and concealing records and documents with the intent to impede the investigation by the U.S. Department of Justice. McKinsey had previously agreed to pay almost $1 billion to settle lawsuits by states, local governments, and others related to its opioid consulting. So this would seem to mark now, guys, an end to a disastrous chapter for the company and for the country. Sarah, back over to you.
Disastrous chapter. Okay. They throw a name out, Elling. This partner who allegedly destroyed these, or who admitted to destroying these documents, you know, obstruction of justice is a major, major federal crime. Okay. It truly is. I could cite you, you know, the statutes and so on, but Elling, this guy, he pleaded guilty. He is not going to jail, my friends. Let's actually look at the McKinsey settlement. This guy, hold on. Okay, so, you know, here is the announcement. And this is, let me just pull this up for you guys. Share screen. And here is McKinsey. Okay. So you can see this here. And of course, you need to see it bigger. This is, and I will also grab this for the chat for those who just want to have this at home for a moment. Now, this was from December 13th. It came out on Friday. And this is the big announcement of the settlement of this criminal and civil investigation involving McKinsey's work with Purdue Pharma. And remember, Purdue Pharma, you know, I write about them a lot in Big Dirty Money. They're the ones who kind of led the parade of addiction when they put out their OxyContin and made false claims about, in their marketing to doctors, about how it would not be addictive. Let's also remember that they settled a lawsuit. This is Purdue Pharma back in, I think it was 2004. And they did not, it was a criminal case. And the 3 executives at Purdue did end up pleading guilty to these misdemeanors and did not go to prison. We're now talking about a second round with Purdue Pharma, second criminal investigation that you might remember that ended up kind of not just the U.S. Government, the Department of Justice, right before the end of Donald Trump's term, around the end of 2020 under Bill Barr, trying to enter into a settlement with Purdue Pharma. But there was a whole bankruptcy process under which, you know, this particular government settlement with Purdue would be wrapped into the bankruptcy of that firm. Now, let's just talk about this, though. McKinsey is settling this case. And when we talk about a deferred prosecution agreement, that means they're not charging McKinsey, the partnership, with a crime, because they know if they were actually charged with the crime, that there could be repercussions for their client base. Look what happened to Arthur Anderson, and that conviction was overturned at the United States Supreme Court. But let's take a look at the supposed, you know, the person thrown under the bus, the head that they were given. This guy, Martin Elling, by the way, he was charged, he was charged with obstruction of justice. And the problem, though, is with this is that he agreed to plead guilty. And he's going to enter sentencing at a later date. But the plan, I don't think, would be any prison for this man. We're not seeing that is going to happen. By the way, this Martin Elling is now living in Thailand. This is very serious charges. And there's a 71-page statement of what's called agreed upon facts, which provides detailed accounts of what they did. Here's what bothers me about this is the Department of Justice could actually charge people at McKinsey higher up the chain, not just this guy, and they could actually have announced and required at the day that they announced this, who was going to be sentenced. I mean, let me say it differently. They could say what sentences that they were asking for obstruction of justice. And it cannot be just one person. The Department of Justice has at their fingertips a doctrine called Responsible Corporate Officer Doctrine. And they use this, and so it's built into some statutes, like environmental statutes and like the FDA health and welfare type statutes about selling adulterated drugs and contaminated foods. And they are allowed to charge people. And they did this, by the way, previously. And this doctrine has been held up. You can charge the responsible corporate officer, the person who has control and the ability to stop illegal actions from taking place. You can charge them under this responsible corporate officer doctrine. And even though it's a misdemeanor, it can come with some prison time. And we saw this, and this has been held up with recently with the father and son group who ran Quality Egg. And there was, it's funny that it's called Quality Egg because there was a huge, huge contamination of these. So this is, I'm sorry, the name of this case that came down in involving the names, I'm not remembering it. It's Peter and Austin DeCoster. They pleaded guilty for violating the statutes that are the statutes are supposed to keep our food safe. And they pleaded guilty as responsible corporate officers, even though they were not the ones in the facilities in where millions of eggs are produced. In other words, there was a recall in 2010 involving millions of eggs, and there were thousands of people who were made sick from salmonella. And even though they pleaded guilty, they objected to the fact that they were going to have to serve prison sentences. And those sentences were held up on appeal at the 8th Circuit. And this responsible corporate officer doctrine goes back to 1943 at the United States Supreme Court. And it's the reason why I'm mentioning it in the case of Purdue Pharma. Remember how I told you that the company got involved in criminal behavior before? Well, Purdue Pharma, their previous problem, the previous case in which they were caught lying essentially about OxyContin, that case where their executives actually pleaded guilty, right? That case, what they actually pleaded guilty to, it was a top lawyer, it was a medical officer and others. They pleaded guilty to these misbranding charges. And this misbranding case they were pleading guilty for was under the responsible corporate officer doctrine. Now, I'm not saying that Merrick Garland is asleep at the switch. I'm saying that Merrick Garland is a fucking pain in my ass, because no matter what happens at this Department of Justice, all I can say is one of the biggest failings of the Biden administration was appointing this guy. And the second biggest failing which has led to the downfall of our democracy was Merrick Garland not appointing special counsels when he took office in March of 2021, because we would not have what we are facing ahead of us, right? Okay, so that is what I have to say to you on the topic of the Justice Department and corruption. Now, I have got, and we are running low on time. I want to try to stay within an hour here, and maybe even less. So what I want to say to you is I'm going to get to my person of the day. But before I get to that, I want to share with you something good happening in Congress, which is yet another example of a good thing that can be done in the government, which was a bill being introduced to abolish the Electoral College. Now, you might say, that's not going anywhere. You know what? A lot of stuff that the far right did and wanted wasn't going anywhere, but they tried and they tried and they didn't give up. And when people would say it's not going anywhere, they just brazened through. people I'm going to keep brazening through. So here we go.
Now, historians tell us that the Electoral College was a result of compromise, devised by our founders in search of a consensus when a unified United States of America simply didn't exist. And in many regards, we honor the talents, the wisdom, and the genius of our founding fathers. But there are shortcomings that still impact us today. I believe that we must reflect on whether the time for this particular institution, the Electoral College, has passed. Now, recall that the Constitution, as ratified, also contained provisions that we consider abhorrent, such as women and people of color being denied the fundamental right in a democracy, the right to vote. The founders themselves created a path to amend our Constitution to keep it a living document, to be adapted as future generations and circumstances and times require. For the Electoral College, that time has come.
And let me be clear. This is Governor Kathy, I'm going to say her name wrong, Hochul. And I say Congress can do this because unless you open up a constitutional amendment, you need obviously the states and Congress. Here, let me keep playing it.
Unfairly, less populated states have outsized influence, and in fact, the votes of their residents count more than the residents of a state like New York. Consider that a single elector in Wyoming, no offense to Wyoming, represents 200,000 residents, and in New York, an elector like you represent 700,000. And this convoluted process also leads candidates for president to spend an inordinate amount of time in a few swing states rather than appealing to the voters of our entire country. And in the worst case scenario, it means that a person can become president of the United States even if he or she did not win the popular vote.
Okay. Now, I hear someone in the chat say there's already a path. It's a National Popular Vote Compact. Yes, thank you. I've said that I might talk about that at some point. And let me say that, as you know, the states could, and this is getting a little bit into the weeds, some states have decided this, and states can say, you know what? I am going to have, a state can pass, can enter into this compact so that if enough states agree to do this, that what they will do is pass, allow that their votes. So let me just give you an example. Let's say you're in a state where your electors would your electors would go to whoever won the popular vote in your I'm sorry, let me just trying to, my computer is about to die, you guys, and so I'm just going to put this cord on. You can basically throw your votes through this compact to the candidates who won the popular vote. I'm not entirely convinced that this will ever happen, though, because the kind of states who we would need to agree to do that are the kind of states who are going to support Republican candidates. But still, there's a way to do it without a constitutional amendment. Now, let me now get to you, before we get to person of the day and to Crazy Town, is Donald Trump on the vaccine question. There could be possibly nothing more important if you care about the lives of people other than a single CEO, Amy Klobuchar and others. If you care about the lives of children and the elderly, if you care about us, you would not try to kill us by getting rid of vaccines. So that's a fact. Let me play this for you about this. This is Donald Trump at one of his press conferences.
Can I follow up on Robert Kennedy? He's on the Hill today. He's meeting with senators. What do you say to people who are worried that his views on vaccines will translate into policies that will make their kids less safe?
No, I think he's going to be much less radical than you would think. I think he's got a very open mind, or I wouldn't have put him there. He's going to be very much less radical. But there are problems. I mean, we don't do as well as a lot of other nations, and those nations use nothing.
No. Let me quote you what Donald said. We don't do as well as a lot of other countries, and those countries use nothing. He is suggesting that in the United States, the health of our people, our children, the infant mortality rate, and so on, and the lifespan is worse than in countries where there are no vaccines. Now, first of all, I'm not actually aware, and I am not an epidemiologist. I'm not aware of a nation where there are no vaccines, but I am aware of places where vaccines are scarce. And without doing the math, I can assure you that where there are no vaccines, people do not do better. Where there are no vaccines, I believe that the mortality rate is higher. Now, I'm going to, because I am not an epidemiologist, pull up for you, because there is this thing called Google, and there are actually expert organizations who publish information on this, not fucking morons who people elected to be our president, and not the majority of voters. The majority of voters rejected him because a huge chunk didn't vote. Another chunk voted for Kamala Harris, and he barely won by a little over 1%, right, of the popular vote. So most people are too disgusted to vote, don't think the government does something for them, I'm sorry, or made this stupid mistake, or the I'm angry at Kamala Harris and Joe Biden mistake of putting this man in office. So let me share for you the truth about vaccines, my friends. Let's just look at something that actually means something. Okay. Global immunization, worldwide disease incidence. This is from CHOP, known as the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. Very respected hospital. Not some former drug addict. And I like when people go into rehab and I think addiction is a disease, but not someone who, like RFK, thinks heroin is actually better than immunizations. Okay. So this is what we know about immunization. The top cause of death in children less than 5 years old in 2021. This is data that was published in 2024. These causes and death indicate several million losses associated with infectious disease. More than 40 of 100 deaths may be associated with infectious disease. That's lower respiratory infections, malaria, diarrheal diseases, sepsis, tuberculosis, measles, meningitis, and encephalitis. No, these are not Christmas presents. This is the future in America. And let me just say that we have a problem. We have a problem with lack of vaccination in the world. And I am shouting now because he is going to kill people. And now, this is where I'm going full circle. Fuck you, Amy Klobuchar. It's not about you looking bipartisan for your people. My God, woman, be like Garcia in Congress. Where are the people saying this is an emergency? He is going to murder our children. Show up, people. And tomorrow I will be showing up with that white chart where I'm going to hold this administration accountable. Now, okay, back up, Jen, and let's move on before we go to crazy town to my person of the day. And this is hard to talk about because I just love this man. It is Sherrod Brown, who gave yesterday his final floor speech in the Senate. Now, I'm hopeful that he may run again. I don't know. I just don't know what his plan is. This is Senator from Ohio, and he just lost his seat after so many years representing the people of Ohio so honorably with such intelligence, and also his work on the Senate Banking Committee was amazing during and after the global financial crisis. He cares about people. He cares about workers. He cares about this country. And he wrote a book called Desk 88 because he looked inside of his desk that he was assigned in the Senate and saw the names of the other people who had sat there. And it gave him such the chills that he wrote a book describing the history of those people, the shoes that he stepped in. He is a good man. He is a real life James Stewart in Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. I want to play for you just one excerpt of his talk where he chokes up when he spoke about his beloved wife, Connie Schultz, who I include her now as a friend when I had my show booked up, the podcast, and you can still find these episodes. I interviewed Connie about her work, and it was one of the most meaningful conversations I think I've had in my lifetime. And she is wonderful. She is a journalist. She is a humanist. If you don't already follow her, I'm no longer on Facebook, but she's there. I don't know if she's still on Twitter. I know she's back on Blue Sky, but she is a Pulitzer Prize winning columnist, brilliant woman, and a heart of gold. Let me play this for you. This is our person of the day, Sherrod Brown.
Bob and Charlie, for literally 50 years with the sacrifices that family members inevitably make to ambition, to service, yes, sometimes to ego, for a career of serving the public. To my beloved Connie, how selfless she's been. As I've pursued this dream, her exceptional talent is exceeded only by her kindness and spirit. As a wife and mother and grandmother extraordinaire, there's no one like her. How lucky I've been the last.
I'm sorry, I need to have that back. Let me just.
So to my colleagues, this is my last speech on the Senate floor, but it's not, I promise you, the last time.
I just want to play that one little piece again about Connie because she is, I'm sad for him, but I'm also sad for her. I consider her a mentor to so many, to me. She said something that what we should be doing is we should lift while we climb. It means so much to me. Let me just play this piece again because I cut it off for you.
Mother and grandmother extraordinaire.
Hold on. Here we go.
As I've pursued this dream.
Okay, I'm gonna get this right this time. Here we go.
Yes, sometimes to ego, for a career of serving the public. To my beloved Connie, how selfless she's been. As I've pursued this dream, her exceptional talent is exceeded only by her kindness and spirit. As a wife and mother and grandmother extraordinaire, there's no one like her. How lucky I've been the last 22 years. So to my colleagues, this is my last speech on the Senate floor, but it's not, I promise you, the last time you'll hear from me. Thank you.
Ooh, that is what I like to see in the Senate. That is a man worthy of applause. If you don't know much about Sherrod Brown, I encourage you to learn more. I know about that book called Desk 88. Have not read it, have wanted to. I think this is the moment. Now, that brings us, my friends, to Crazy Town. Let's do it. So Crazy Town today. Crazy Town today is Donald Trump. I'm now getting to the point where I'm just going to try to treat him like the clown he is. And I find clowns scary. I don't really find clowns entertaining. And I certainly don't have a fancy for clowns. And I don't want to go there, but there actually are people who have a special, let's just put it this way, liking for clowns. I don't like clowns. And so Donald Trump, I'm going to spend the next 4 years treating him like a scary clown. As I've said before, he and his administration are like a scary clown car, like a car that opens up and all these clowns spill out, but they're actually holding automatic rifles, right? They're holding AR-47s and they're shooting, because that's what it is. So I'm going to stay out of my way of these clowns, but I'm calling them out like they are. And here is what he's doing. This ridiculous man. He's suing everyone that he can. And this is it's laughable if it weren't so frightening, in that people are going to capitulate to him. Not me, not independent media, not ProPublica, not good newspapers. But yes, we've seen the Washington Post, we've seen the LA Times, we've seen ABC News capitulate. Let's listen to this moron clown threaten more lawsuits to chill speech.
I have a few others that I'm doing. I'm going to, as an example, I'm doing this not because I want to.
Oh, yeah.
I'm doing this because I feel I have an obligation to. I'm going to be bringing one against the people in Iowa, their newspaper, which
the Des Moines Registered, moron.
Very good pollster who got me right all the time. And then just before the election, she said I was going to lose by 3 or 4 points, and it became the biggest story.
Okay, I can't even listen to him. What a moron. He's suing a pollster. What are his damages? He won the fucking election. This man is crazy. Okay, here we go. See you tomorrow morning at 8:30.